ilusión. Negrita linda, tienes todo mi amor. Yo quiero tenerte en mis brazos, amor. Negrita linda, tú eres mi ilusión. Desde que te vi, este corazón late más fuerte por ti. Yo quiero tenerte en mis brazos, amor. Negrita linda, tú eres mi ilusión. Yo quiero tenerte en mis brazos, amor.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
This is KBCC 89.5 FM, Tracy, California, Peace and Justice Network of San Joaquin. And it's time for the one and only, that was the promo. Welcome to Stockton Alive with your host, the one and only Nate Knott. And here's your host, Nate Knott.
Hey, we're back on the air with Dustin and I. We had a couple shows where I went on one time with Betty and one kind of winged it myself, and she engineered it, which is great. Of course, she always turns over her vast listening audience to us from her various different shows that come on at 5 o'clock and operate till 6. And she's actually not here today, which is kind of amazing.
She has the
I thought she
day
worked
off
at the station, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a beautiful day out, Nate.
Well, I walked over. As you know, I rarely drive, and I usually ride the express bus from downtown. But now that I often have Mondays off, I can be coming from home, which I did today, and I walked over from my house. Perfect weather, about 70 degrees outside. Perfect in the shade, almost no breeze. In fact, a slight cool breeze would have been welcome. But anyway, with two things to mention. First of all, I try to remember to mention the date that we're on the air so people can relatively know what we're talking about in relation to actual, real chronological time. So today is Monday, March 18th, 2019. Mm-hmm. So we're live tonight on this date. If you see us on another date, we're tape delayed. And happy St. Patrick's Day after. Since yesterday was officially St. Patrick's Day, and I actually have my green shirt on today in honor of yesterday's St. Patrick's Day. I'm quite aware, and I even have a soda with a green can today. And I'm quite aware that for many people, it is not St. Patrick's Day. It's St. Patrick's weekend. There are some people who partied from Thursday through at least Sunday, and probably many of them took today off. So, with that having been said, as always, we have plenty to talk about here. We always joke when we say we have a show about nothing. Actually, we usually have quite a bit. Now, today, my main intent was to talk about all the many events, not events as in necessarily entertainment, but all the events that are available in Stockton for participation by the public. However, because Dustin's here and because Dustin and I are sports people and we're reformed, recovering sports broadcasters, we are going to talk about this NCAA tournament to some extent. We'll try to give it a local slant, by the way, but we're also going to talk today, and I'd already planned on this anyway. This was originally going to be what I talked about last week. I was originally scheduled to air last Monday, but we're here this week. Our next show live will probably be Monday, April 1st. That's a little tentative.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah, and that's right. And I'm pretty sure I can't do next Monday, which is April 25th, I want to say. In any event, two things I was going to talk about today. Well, several. It was the local sports scene. We've done that a lot in early shows. We haven't done it that much for a while. But we've got the Stockton G Kings, the Stockton Rush. We've got Delta College all over the place with sports. We have some Pacific sports. So we will do that. Then we'll go into the NCAA tournament. But let me start with my primary subject right off the bat. I attend a fair number of meetings, not a huge number, but a fair number of meetings, both on my own and sometimes representing the San Joaquin Regional Transit District, RTD. Oh, by the way, I'm in casual clothes today. People usually see me in a suit and tie. That's because I usually have Mondays off now, and I'm not necessarily coming straight from work. And all the promo photographs show me the suit and tie, and that's how I would actually sort of prefer to do the show. But I'll be honest, I'm not going to dress up in a suit and tie just to come in for the show on a Monday. So anyway, but here's, for RTD, I've been working on a social events meeting calendar. And just to give the viewers how many things you could be attending or going to on a regular basis, and this does not include church gatherings, by the way, which is yet a whole other category. This is a list that I have, the tentative list I have so far. Eventually the camera will pop around to it again. And I'm not intending that you can read this list. I'm intending for you to see how much is on there. The top ones that have multiple bullet points are ones that I'll call Tier 1 activities that I will try to go to. And then the ones that are simply a whole bunch of bullet points that are single-spaced, which you see on the bottom, are what I call Tier 2 meetings that I could go to. And this is scheduled meetings I'm talking about. That doesn't include special events like the stock market or one of these cupcake or pop-up art things that happens, or like the events that happen next door in the beautiful Stockton Art Lab right here on Bedford and Pacific Avenue on the Miracle Mile next to TVOSJ. I think I got that right, the Voice of Stockton.
Yeah.
Now, I heard in the opening that we had the call letters for FM radio and Tracy.
Yeah, coming soon. So
Can you repeat those call letters for me?
KBCC.
KBCC. Are we broadcasting on FM tonight?
Not tonight, Nate,
but we will
soon.
be
Very
fairly soon.
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty exciting. That means I could actually tell people to turn their radio dial, as they used to say years ago. Now, I have an anecdote you're going to love. I don't know if the audience is going to love it, but you're going to love it, Dustin. Mm-hmm. You know that for one reason or another, because we're recovering addicted broadcast people, sports broadcasters, that just a time or two, we've meandered into a story about Vin Scully of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got, this is a true story now. I couldn't make this up. I'm sitting at my new favorite downtown Stockton bar, the Deliberation Room, which we've talked about numerous times, the first legitimate bar and lounge in downtown Stockton in approximately 23 years since you had the Shamrock Club near the Stockton Record, which mysteriously closed about 1998 or something like that. Okay, I'm sorry, about 1995. So I'm sitting there along with my wife, Becky, my Peruvian party wife, who's been on the air several times here in various different shows and may host a show here one day. And we're enjoying our usual Friday happy hour. And then one of her energetic, vivacious young employees, a young Latino woman from the Southern California area, whose name happens to be Angie, is sitting there talking to me. Now, this is totally uninitiated on my part. This is like 1,000,000 to 1. She somehow the subject of baseball came up. Now, I didn't even know she was a sports fan. I don't remember bringing up sports that much. Yeah. But somehow it came up. And she says, well, you know, I became a baseball fan growing up in Los Angeles. Actually, I don't think she grew up in Los Angeles, but she lived down there for a while, temporarily. College or for a year or two or something like that. I forgot what the circumstance was. Says, but you know, I became a baseball fan. I said, oh, well, that's great. It's a great sport. Love being outdoors. It's the last sport, one of the last sports where you can see people and they're not covered up with headgear and shoulder pads and all that kind of stuff. He says, well, the reason I like it is because I heard it on the radio. So my ears perked up. I said, oh, really? You heard baseball on the radio? Not many, the young generation doesn't really listen to baseball on the radio like my generation did or the previous generations. Well, that's true, but I was at the beach and somebody had their radio and this wonderful voice was coming out to me. I said, oh, yeah. And she says, yeah, this great broadcaster named Vin Scully was doing baseball, and he was doing the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, of course, I'm a Giants fan. I hate the Dodgers. But, we like but we have the common interest of broadcasting and baseball here. Plus, you can't have a rivalry without the team that you hate. So, and rivalries is really what makes sports fun, which will be part of our discussion about the NCAA tournament, is how rivalries play a part in that, a big part. But she says, well, this guy has such a wonderful voice, and he just described the game so well. He made me feel like I was sitting in Dodger Stadium. And she went on and on about it. I thought, whoa, I never dreamed in my life I'd ever have a beautiful young Latina woman in Stockton, California, telling me that she became addicted to baseball because she heard the wonderful, mellifluous voice and of Vin Scully of Los Angeles doing Dodgers games. I think she heard it on the beach of all places. Now in L.A. they were famous, at least in the radio era. I don't know about currently today. Oh, this woman's not that old. She's in her 20s, so this is a fairly recent thing, like 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I guess people still take their radios to the beach and still tune in baseball. That's great. Baseball to me is the best radio sport, by the way.
Now, yeah, when you tune into the Dodgers now, you on radio, you listen to Charlie Steiner and Rick Monday.
Right. Charlie Steiner was one of the first broadcasters when ESPN became a nationally
national powerhouse. Yeah.
Right. And then he bounced around. Not when I say bounced around, he never was unsuccessful. I don't mean it that way. He moved around from one great job to another. And do you know the story of how did he get to the Dodgers exactly? I mean, that's a great job to be a play-by-play broadcaster.
Charlie Steiner?
Yeah.
I believe he was with the Yankees after he left ESPN, and then he went out west after they had an opening because Vin Scully no longer was traveling out.
That's
east.
right.
Yeah.
So he started filling in on the East Coast broadcasts?
I think he started filling in for during Vince Scully's tenure, Vince Scully was simulcast on the first 3 innings of
course,
television
you can't
and radio.
replace Vin Scully, who has this wonderful way of speaking slowly and almost like a river flowing as he tells you to pull up a chair. We've got a beautiful day here in Chavez Ravine. Who else but the Dodgers could have such a beautiful stadium with palm trees in the parking lot? And, of course, our foot-long Dodger dogs with Farmer John's. The sausages are plump when you cook them.
Well, everybody forgets Vince Scully also did the U.S. the Masters.
He did golf a lot, yes.
And, he did golf, and he also did the NFL.
Yes, he did. In fact.
He was John Madden's first partner.
Yes, and in fact, he did the CBS television broadcast of the incredible NFC Championship game of 1982, where my San Francisco 49ers defeated the Dallas Cowboys and tipped the balance of power with the famous The Catch, Montana to Clark. Vince Scully did that game with Hank Stram.
But they always played Jack Buck's call of that
They
game.
do play Jack, yeah, and also the Dallas
CBS
play-by-play announcers is broadcast a lot.
I believe it wasn't Vern Lundquist at the time. I think Brad Sham already took over for Vern Lundquist.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the Brad person that did
Brad Sham.
Now, actually, a great version of it that you don't get to hear very often is the actual 49er broadcaster.
Was that Lon Simmons at the time?
No, Lon Simmons
wasn't Joe Starkey yet.
This is when KCBS had just picked them up. And so we had the former longtime Stanford broadcaster, and now, of course, I'm going blank on the name of this. It'll come to me. Don Klein.
Yeah.
Yes, Don Klein, who did Stanford football for 30-something years, gets the 49ers, and I think it was their first season. And all of a sudden, the Niners, they had stolen well, I shouldn't say stolen. They outbid the KSFO for the broadcast rights. So when it went from KSFO to KCBS, they went with Don Klein instead of Lon Simmons. Lon Simmons did, in fact, come back later on KGO, and he got to do the Montana comeback against Cincinnati, and he got to do that Super Bowl.
Well, Don Klein, but also they have the voice of the California Bears, Joe Starkey, for a long time. Was
and
the
Joe
voice.
Starkey also broadcast the Super Bowl, the San Diego win.
Yeah, 94.
Yeah, and he and people don't realize this. Joe Starkey paid his dues. He started his major league broadcasting career with the California Golden Seals of the National Hockey League, working for Charlie Finley. And I think the Seals, they had the Golden Pacific Hockey Network with 4 stations, but I mean, it was real touch and go that they even had radio stations. The Oakland A's even started one season, believe it or not, without a commercial broadcast station.
Joe Starkey started as a banker before he became a radio broadcaster.
Really?
Yeah.
Now he's doing...
doing Cal Bears.
Yeah, he still does the Cal Bears. I guess he'll do that. I imagine he will do that until he's no longer breathing.
Yeah, Lee Grosskopf finally retired this year.
Okay, so anyway.
Yeah.
Let me go over these meetings real quick, and then we'll get back to sports. I just had to tell you, though, that the odds on you and I having talked about Vince Scully, and I know our listeners probably don't appreciate how that relates to Stockton and Stockton Alive.
Fans.
But it does, because Vince Scully is a historic part of baseball. And Stockton, I believe, is something of a Giants town, and the Giants and Dodgers are a huge, bitter rivalry in baseball, and Vince Scully's well known for it.
A lot of people forget in Lodi, Lodi had
the Lodi Dodgers. That's
Lodi
right,
Dodgers
California
where
League.
Fernando Valenzuela made his first ever appearance in
I did not
America.
know that he pitched there, but I knew that I did see the Lodi Dodgers play.
Yeah.
I also saw the Lodi Orions play.
Yeah.
One year they were a Japanese affiliate of the Lotte Orions. And then they also were the Lodi Crushers and a kind of a semi-pro for a while. That was I forgot what they used to call it. I think it was just called Lodi Memorial Park. Now it's Tony Zuppo Field.
Yeah, Tony Zuppo Field, where actually I did a college baseball team a couple of years ago for one season that summer, a couple seasons ago. 2016.
And the Lodi team, I think, was also a farm club for the Padres and Angels at different times.
Just looking at that stadium, it's
a pretty classic.
It
looks like a Midwestern minor league stadium.
Yeah.
It's all roof and all screen.
Yep.
And then one year...
The Duggets are the old Chicago Wrigley Field style.
Yes.
Down.
And one year, believe it or not, this is probably about 19... I think the first time a team left there not to return was like 1973 or 4. Then it came back a couple different times. But one of the times they brought minor league baseball back to Lodi, obviously on a very tight budget, since Lodi is one of the smallest cities in America to have been a home for a major league affiliated minor league baseball team, obviously on a shoestring budget. And Tony Zuppo Field doesn't seat many people. It only seats a little over 1,000 people. But anyway, they had a teenager playing the organ. Now, of course, many of you out there don't even realize that it used to be a regular thing for the music between innings and during baseball games to be a live organ. That was the tradition in baseball from somewhere after the turn of 1900 right up until, I'd say, about 10 years ago. And most stadiums still have either an organ or recorded organ music. The Giants actually do have a keyboard organist who does still play. And but they have so many. It's so commercial now with the TV commercials and radio commercials, and they're sponsoring this and sponsoring that, and all the things that they're talking about between innings, and all the contests and promotions.
Before you get back to your schedule, guess what song? I was the in-stadium DJ. Guess what song I played for the Lodi Crushers after every victory?
Oh, you did? You were with the Lodi Crushers?
Well, the college team a couple years ago.
Oh, I would have no idea.
Stuck in Lodi. So, that's what I play as the victory song for that season. The one and only season.
That reminds me of when I was doing Edison public address announcing at Edison High School. Now, their sports is pretty good now, and it's been very good, and they have great teams at school and team spirit now.
Yeah.
The whole place has been completely rebuilt. I was just there 3 weeks ago, and I was just stunned at the beauty of the Edison High School campus, which, with a couple exceptions, is all new buildings since I taught there. Mm-hmm. The only thing left is the speech arts building, Du Bois Old Gym, all of which have been heavily remodeled. And the gymnasium, but it's been completely remodeled. The football field's been completely remodeled. And one rather yucky wing of flat-top buildings is still out by the gymnasium parking lot, but that's been remodeled. But anyway.
Yeah, back to your schedule.
But anyway, back to the point I was going to make. Speaking of playing music, I was one of the first PA announcers to actually have theme music at all the games and stuff. We're talking 20-plus years ago now. Back then, they used to get a parent volunteer who could, give them a roster, and they'd barely get the names out or something. Whereas I was a former play-by-play broadcaster and wanted it to be really flashy. And I was trying to give Edison a really classy image. So I was doing all the theme music and stuff pretty much by popping cassette tapes in and out that were pre-queued up before the game.
Nice.
So I could pop them in and run them really quick. But the Edison girls basketball team, God bless them, one year was 1-22. And the only win was they pulled out I think they made a free throw with 1 second to go to win, by the way.
Wow.
In one of the ugliest basketball games I ever witnessed. And they beat Stagg. Poor Stagg. During a stretch of time when the men's team went 1-69, the only win they had was at Stagg by 1 point, and they let the coach go like a week later. But anyway, the point was, during this 1-22 girls basketball season, I wore out that song, We Will Survive. Mm-hmm. I had to play it 2 or 3 times a game, just to let people know there would be life after the basketball game and after they lost another dreadful basketball game. Again, I want to point out, Edison is very good in most sports now, and they're very competitive, and they have great school spirit. Attendance at the games is excellent, and the facilities are wonderful. That wasn't the case, unfortunately, when I was there, although I had some great moments there, but it just wasn't the case for the most part. Okay, real briefly, I want to go over this list of, I'm just going to read off this list. That's going to take a little while just to read them off. But just to give you an idea, all the things that people could be doing to participate and improve their local community, instead of just complaining about things, they actually could show up and help make policy and improve things. So, first of all, you have Stockton City Council, 2 Tuesdays every month. I believe their general schedule is the first and third Tuesday. Stockton Planning Commission, that's the third Wednesday of every month. I'm sorry, the second Thursday of every month. San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors, they usually do the second and fourth Tuesday mornings of every month. San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, your ACE commuter trains, they do the first Friday morning of each month. They also, many of the same people and affiliated staff in the same building, which is the Cabral Ace for their former beautiful, elegant Southern Pacific train station at Weber Avenue, on Weber Avenue. They also have the Amtrak Joint Powers Authority based there. Stockton people not only manage the Ace commuter train, own and operate the Ace commuter trains. Stockton people, for the most part, call most of the management shots of the entire Amtrak San Joaquin Rail Corridor, which extends from Bakersfield with bus connections all over Southern California, up to Fresno, up to Modesto, up to Stockton, over to Martinez and Antioch, and on to Richmond and Oakland with bus connections in the Bay Area and bus connections all the way north to Eureka and to Sacramento and Redding. Our people in Stockton, based at our train station, manage that entire Amtrak corridor. It's called the Amtrak San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. Those meetings are the fourth Friday every other month, I believe, and they vary. They move them around from city to city, and they always schedule them so you can go there and come back by train. Then there's the Valley Rail Committee and the Valley Link Rail, and those are two different organizations. One is trying to connect Ace to BART in the Bay Area by the Altamont, on the west side of the Altamont. And the other is planning for a huge, new, very aggressive train service from Modesto and Stockton to Sacramento, up to North Natomas, about where the old Arco Arena is, that will also have bus connections to the Sacramento airport. Then there's the Downtown Stockton Alliance, which has its board meeting on the third Wednesday afternoon of each month at about 3:30 in the afternoon. The rail committee meetings, by the way, are different cities at different times of the day, so I can't really give you an exact, but they're every other month. There's the Stockton Downtown Comeback Club, which meets every Thursday morning, all year round, except for Thanksgiving and an occasional other holiday. Once in a great while, New Year's and Christmas fall on Thursday, like once every 7 years. Those are currently at Casa Flores in downtown Stockton. They rotate roughly every 2 months to a local downtown Stockton restaurant. Then there's a thing called the Business Team San Joaquin meetings, which are done by the San Joaquin County WorkNet. And those are meetings on I believe it's the second Wednesday morning of every other month. I'm still trying to get some dates on that. So those are regularly scheduled meetings that are pretty predictable and people can know about. In addition to that, you have the San Joaquin Council of Governments, which actually collects and sends out most of the money for most streets, roads, highway construction, and transit in San Joaquin County, and railroad overpasses. If you've noticed, all these relatively beautiful new railroad overpasses have been built in the last 10 years, such as in Lathrop and Stockton and a few other places. Hammer Lane, let's see, there's a couple more. And the next one, if they can afford it and get it done, the next one will probably be Airport Way over the railroad tracks by Alpine, which is a real quagmire when the train comes. But anyway, those meetings are they're regular board meetings the fourth Thursday of every month. Then you have Stockton Unified School District, second and fourth Tuesday nights of each month normally. San Joaquin Delta College Board, which you're tied in a lot with Delta. You have your Delta College Mustang shirt on as we speak.
Who the women's team just finished. They were in the final state finals this weekend.
We were certainly going to talk about that coming up.
Okay.
You bet. Yeah, we're going to talk about Delta College. And I also ran into Dr. Kathy Hart coming out of the Stockton G Kings game the other night. She's a big sports fan, by the way. She really supports Delta College.
Yeah.
I mean, she should as president, but there's a lot of presidents that don't go to games. She goes to games, and she really gets into it. She goes to afternoon tennis matches, baseball games, all kinds of stuff.
There's no tennis done, no more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, soccer.
Yeah.
But she would, if they had tennis, she would go.
She would be there.
At volleyball, let's see. San Joaquin County Planning Commission meetings are the third Thursday night of each month. Stockton Cultural Heritage Board meetings are the first Wednesday night of each month. The Miracle Mile Improvement District. We're located in our beautiful studios here of, TVOSJ. I have to still think about that a little bit. Our beautiful studios are right here at Bedford Place and Pacific behind the Stockton Art Lab. And the Miracle Mile Improvement District, of course, is a self-help business district downtown, much like the Downtown Stockton Alliance. where business property owners assess themselves a tax and a fee in order to spend money to promote the area and improve it. They have their meetings once a month. There's Grounds for a Common Cause, a Stockton local group for environmental and planning and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. There's also the Delta Sierra group, part of the Sierra Club. They meet the fourth Monday night of each month. And I know they happen to meet at the United Methodist Church, or Central United Methodist Church. It's right across the street from University of the Pacific, that really big church on Pacific Avenue. There's the South Stockton Merchants Association. They meet the third Thursday morning of each month. They usually meet at the conference room at the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds. And then you've got chamber meetings. We have the Greater Stockton Chamber, we have the Hispanic Chamber, we have the Asian American Chamber, and we have the African American Chamber. Just to name 4, there's a couple more, I don't know exactly their names. 3 of them have mixers every month. The Greater Stockton Chamber mixer is usually the first Tuesday night of each month, and these rotate to different businesses. The Hispanic Chamber, if my memory serves me correct, is the second Tuesday of each month. And then the Asian Chamber, which is very heavily involved with downtown, by the way, and supports a lot of downtown activities. And the Asian Chamber is heavily involved with TVOSJ, as a couple of the people who are active in that chamber are involved, I think, with our board of directors and other activities here, and broadcasters here. They meet their chambers usually the third Thursday. I'm sorry. I said Tuesdays with all these. I'm sorry. Greater Stockton Chamber is the first Thursday of each month. Hispanic Chamber is the second Thursday night of each month. And the Asian Chamber is the third Thursday night of each month. At this time, for reasons I don't understand, the African American Chamber doesn't have regular mixers. But as I talk to people from that organization, I will try to let them know that'd be a great thing for them to do. So now we can talk about sports. Let's talk about the local scene a little bit, and then we'll get into the NCAA brackets, which you've so greatly provided for us. I take it you printed these off the internet or online? Yeah. I was thinking old school when I told you, gee, if I'd have known that, I could have brought my Stockton record in. Of course, you can just print it out now. I have to remind the viewers, I'm still pretty old school, and I still don't instantly realize all the things that are available. I graduated from college before the PC computer existed. So I still have to think a little bit. I generally pretty much know all that now, but I have to think about it. Okay. Local sports scene. I went to I have season tickets to the Stockton G Kings. Now, G Kings means the G League, and the G League means the NBA Development League, which used to be called the D League, but now it's heavily sponsored by Gatorade. So therefore, cleverly, they call it the G League. Mm-hmm. And since we have the Sacramento Kings just north of us, a great franchise that we all love very much, and not to confuse the headlines or calling one team another team, and since they are called the Stockton Kings, and we appreciate the fact that the name Stockton is there, since a lot of these teams have kind of goofy names, but we just went with a good identification of our Sacramento team, but not to confuse it with the Kings in Sacramento. Our team is referred to as the G Kings, the Stockton G Kings. So, I know you've been to some games there, Dustin, right?
Yeah, I have.
How many have you attended, do you know?
3 or 4. I've been busy lately, but yeah.
Well, I have season tickets, and in the 209 section, by the way, and our famous local area code. And I think I've missed 4 games, but I've been to all of them other ones. And the problem I had with the first 3 or 4 games, they're all blowouts. They lost the home opener before a large crowd of 5,000 something, really bad. They lost by 34 points. Then they won their next game by 33. Those games were not very interesting to watch. The next game, I believe they were down by 20 plus and then came back and made it close at the very end. Then another game, they had a big lead and almost blew it. But then finally, they kind of settled into this pattern where the game started to really be like more normal, where the game would be back and forth or fairly close. And the highlight of the season from an artistic standpoint probably was when our G Kings came from behind dramatically in the fourth quarter to beat the Santa Cruz Warriors. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're trying to have a big rivalry with Santa Cruz, as the Warriors, of course, are the development team for our world champion Golden State Warriors. And just so happens Santa Cruz has the best team in the G League also.
Yeah, for the last couple of years they had.
Yes,
like
and
the Warriors.
then of course Stockton, just like we talked about the Giants and Dodgers briefly a while ago, to have a successful franchise, you have to have a rival. Mm-hmm. The rivalry has to give you something to point towards, games that you can look forward to every season regardless of the standings. There has to be big crowds, very noisy crowds. And the Santa Cruz team did bring a travel group with them. They did have some fans with them. Mm-hmm. And but the Kings came back to defeat them in a very thrilling game that I believe either ended by 2 points or 1 point. Then the game before that I went to, the G Kings led. Well, first they trailed quite a bit. Then they took a pretty good lead. And then the other team made a dramatic comeback in the fourth quarter. And it came down to a 2-point game with 1.5 seconds to go.
Yes.
They inbounded the ball, and a 3-point attempt was blocked by the Kings. And I was invited down to courtside seats for that game. And I actually was sitting very close to where that play occurred on the court itself. And if you're a courtside fan of the G Kings, there's a free buffet and stuff, and a little bar stuff at one end, kind of a VIP area at one end of the arena that's very nice. I should say the floor. Most people don't know this if they haven't seen it in person, but as you would well know, a basketball court is much, much smaller than an NHL hockey rink.
Yes, it is.
And so there's a lot of empty space that they can fill in. So the Kings have done this by filling it with high tables, a little bar, and a buffet, and they're paying fairly high prices for these seats. I mean, I say fairly. I'm underestimating. They pay quite significantly for these seats, so they are provided with a free buffet and free beverages up to the adult ones, which they do pay for. And so I got to enjoy that for one game, and that game turned out to be a really thriller. Well, anyway, I went to the game yesterday, and yesterday the Kings were 4 players short. 3 were injured, and one was getting a day off for rest. They've already clinched a playoff spot, so they didn't have to win this game. But so they went out with a roster of 7 players instead of 11 or 12. And the other team really pretty much diced them up for about 3 quarters. The other team was just doing all kinds of backdoor cuts, incredible passing around the horn, getting people open for 3-point shots and burying them. If they didn't bury a 3-point shot, they'd whistle a pass down. The guy had cut in for a layup. The other team looked something like a minor league version of the Golden State Warriors, to be honest with you. For 3 quarters, they led by 19. They led by 18. The Kings made a bit of a comeback to get it down to 61-48 at halftime, down by 13. Then they fell immediately down by 18 and 17. And then all of a sudden, right at the end of the third quarter, they had a 10-0 run and got it down to 7 going to the fourth quarter, 88-81. But practically in a blink of an eye, it was back up to 14 points again. And then the G Kings just kept slowly kind of coming back and chipping away. And finally, they had this spurt of points with about 3 minutes to go where they got it down first to 8, and then with about 2:20 to go in the game, down 112-104, in a space of not more than a minute, they rattled off 8 quick points. Now the super high, and then the other team went down and scored at the other end right away. So with about 50 seconds to go, the G Kings are down by 2. Well, a guy named Cody Demps, who of course is related to a former Pacific basketball player, Dell Demps, who is unfortunately the recently just let go general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans, by the way.
And I have a connection to Delta also, though.
Right. And Dell Demps is a great guy, a great player. I'm sorry that happened to New Orleans.
Cody's younger sister was one of the starting shooting guard for the Delta College women's basketball team this season. Yeah.
And I think and the Demps themselves went through Delta, didn't they?
No.
They didn't?
I don't think so, no.
Well, yeah, Dell Demps went to Pacific, actually. I don't remember where Cody Demps went.
He went to Sacramento State.
Oh, okay. That's great, because that's one of my alma maters. So anyway, in one of the most... And by the way, I've known, even in the games that were blowouts, I know the talent level's great. You can tell these guys are great players. Mm-hmm. And they're 1 inch away from the NBA, by the way. In fact, we had a Sacramento King play here for a while in an injury rehab early in the season, but I don't remember which one it was.
Harry Giles?
Yes, that's right. Just like I saw Barry Zito pitch in Stockton at the Stockton ballpark, the same year he eventually pulled the Giants to a world championship. I saw him pitch in Stockton.
That one of the biggest contracts of all time.
Yes. And he finally sort of eventually earned it, but he only had 2 good seasons with the Giants. One season he had a good year and they didn't really recognize it in the Giants, but that was the year the Giants started to turn it around under Bruce Bochy, 2009 I'm talking about. Actually, Barry Zito had a pretty good year for most of the year, and then he had a bad luck string.
Well, you can't blame Barry Zito, though, for who they put around him when he was the starting pitcher for a
while.
while.
He didn't. They were very good teams.
Yeah.
And they played terrible defense behind him.
Yeah.
But anyway, he throws a lot of pitches, and the defense sometimes was back on their heels.
A Northern California here, though, with still a lot of A's fans wish he would have stayed.
Oh yeah. I mean, I saw him pitch with the A's. In fact, I saw him pitch during his Cy Young year. I don't know how anybody hit the guy then. Between his lollipop curveball, a slider, a changeup, and a fastball, the guy was almost unhittable.
Mark Mulder and Tim Hudson also was.
I know. Well, they had the big four, didn't they? Or was it the big three?
Corey Lytle was also on that team, I believe, also too. He was the forgotten guy, but everybody remembers him because of the plane crash. But Corey
and then,
Lytle
of course,
was
Tim
really
Hudson got, as so many A's pitchers, Tim Hudson got a little final glory with the Giants.
Yeah, and the Braves for a long time.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
But anyway, to get back to the game, they're down by two. After fighting to tie it up, they're down by 2. We're under a minute to go. Cody Demps got I think, as I recall, they did a quick inbounds pass, and he just dribbled straight down the court, almost like a hockey player on a breakaway. Dribbled right through 2 people and leaped in midair and just threw down this most emphatic slam dunk. And that tied the game. Now, the previous tie, by the way, was a slam tip-in of a shot that curled out. Now, they had a pretty good crowd yesterday. Not overwhelmingly large, but a pretty good crowd. I want to say 2,500, but the place went absolutely nuts on the slam tip-in and then this slam down. And then the Kings managed to more or less control the overtime, but they eventually won the game 117-116. The overtime, thank good mercifully, is only 2 minutes long in the G League. But the game did in fact end with and I don't remember the name of the team. They were the something Swarm. I think Greensville, North Carolina Swarm or something like that. Anyway, a guy got the inbound pass, was heavily contested. They almost could have called a foul, by the way. And he threw up this prayer of a fall away about a 30-footer. It rimmed the hoop and came out. It actually rattled in and out and came out. And then the horn went off, and our there I go. Our Stockton G Kings had their dramatic win. Now, here's what the win did do. They did not need the win for the playoffs per se, but it clinched a first-round home game.
Yeah.
So they will host the playoff game. Now, they have their final game of the season, regularly scheduled game of the season, is this coming Friday night at 7 o'clock at the Stockton Arena. Okay, so that's the G Kings. We also had a brief, kind of minor return of indoor soccer, and I love indoor soccer. I think it's a great sport. Some people call it futbol rapido, but in any event, and actually the traditionalists really don't like it, just like I'm not a big fan of indoor football because it's so high scoring. The traditionalist soccer fans don't necessarily like it that much. They feel it's a kind of a watered down, phony version of soccer, and the scoring is too high for their likes. But I think it's a great sport. I think it's really wildly exciting if you get 2 evenly matched teams, almost like women's volleyball, where it's so exciting you almost can't watch it. It's just too much. Watching a little goalie with no padding or anything try to guard that huge goal that they pepper shots at is pretty amazing. But anyway, we had a team called the California Cougars, which for a couple of years was called the Stockton Cougars, and it was first to the MISL, the Major Indoor Soccer League, then the PASL, which I want to say stood for the Pacific Athletics Soccer League. Oh, I'm sorry, Professional. I forgot what the A stood for, but Professional Association Soccer League, I believe it was. And the Cougars actually won the championship in the PASL. There should be a banner hanging in the Stockton Arena over that. And that's something me and some other people are going to talk to the management of SMG. SMG was not managing the arena when they were there. IFG was. We think SMG might go with that. But there should be a banner flying in the Stockton Arena for the Stockton Cougars winning the PASL championship in 2010. Having said that, 2009 I believe it was. Having said, and the championship tournament was held in Stockton, by the way. And the Cougars had to win a thrilling overtime game, sudden death overtime game against Edmonton in the semifinal game to get to the championship, where they scored what was called the golden goal. A guy named Aaron Susi scored about 8 minutes into overtime on a nearly impossible angle. He hit the upper right-hand corner of the net somehow over the goalie, who seemed to have good position. And then they slaughtered Cincinnati. I forgot what the Cincinnati Stingers or Runners or something like that the next day. 12 or 13-5, and they won the championship. And there should be a banner in Stockton Arena. Anyway, what happened was the team couldn't survive in Stockton at that time due to the cost of the Stockton Arena and other factors. At that time, they couldn't compete for attendance with the Stockton Thunder. Now, the Stockton Heat draw actually something close or less to what the Cougars used to draw. But anyway, their comparison at that time is the Thunder was great and the Cougars didn't amount to anything, and that was the perception, and that's how it went. So they retreated back to Turlock and continued to keep the franchise alive in Turlock, playing in more of a gymnasium type of atmosphere. But apparently SMG has reached out to the Cougars, said we'd like to have indoor soccer in Stockton again. So this year, using kind of a pickup team, not even a semi-pro team, just a pickup team of highly talented college players and other people, they did 6 what would be considered friendly or exhibition matches at home. They weren't scheduled. They were scheduled, but they weren't league matches. And they got slaughtered in 3 of them. They won 2, and one of them they were fairly competitive. But it was great to watch it. They did get a crowd one time of over 800, another time about 1,150. And it was very exciting. And the thought is that they're probably going to bring it back next year. And next year they may move the Turlock team back to Stockton. So those are the main things I wanted to mention. And before we get to the and we finish up with the NCAA tournament, because Dustin's very excited to talk about that. And I am too, to a point, although I don't no longer know the teams the way I once did, as you probably do. But I can fill in some blanks here and there. But I got to mention, we always talk about new things downtown Stockton. Mm-hmm. We got a spectacular new lounge downtown Stockton. I mean, this is the kind of place you walk in the door and your jaw drops to the floor. I just couldn't. I knew this place was coming, but I didn't know how good it would be. We have a beautiful new lounge, kind of a wine restaurant, something like a downtown version of the Mile Wine Company, without the jazz bands. It's called the Night Owl Lounge. It's in the Courtyard Plaza building, which is the one that's catty corner across diagonally the street from the county courthouse in Hunter Square. It's in a beautiful, and it was always beautiful, but it's been closed for several years, restaurant location facility inside this building. It's very elegant inside. And it was once called Armando's Restaurant and some other things, or Armando's Cafe. It's always been, when it's been open, and it's been an Indian restaurant twice, when it's been open, it's always been very high scale. Well, now it's called the Night Owl Lounge. They're open at least Tuesday through Sunday. They're open until 9 o'clock most nights, 11 o'clock on weekends. And they have stuffed easy chairs. They have beautiful table settings with tablecloth and cloth napkins, and beautiful wine glasses. They have a happy hour from 6 to 9 p.m., not the early ones where you can't get to because you can't get off work in time. They have it at night when you can actually go. And they have it's beer and wine for now. I think they're eventually going to try for full liquor license, but just spectacular place. And then there's another new restaurant that opened, closed briefly, and then it reopened. And they've done some remodeling. It looks pretty, I've been told, I haven't been inside yet. I've been told it's very nice inside, called Roro's. It's across the street from the Deliberation Room on California Street, just a couple doors down from the Unico Salon, Beauty Salon, which is very classy and beautiful. With that having been said, let's take a look at the NCAA tournament bracket. We've got roughly about 7, 8, 10 minutes.
Yes.
So I'll let you lead it off. You can start this off.
Let's start in the East region. The number 1 overall seed will be the Duke Blue Devils of Cameron, North Carolina. Yeah. And they'll be either playing North Carolina Central or North Dakota State, and Duke should easily get that one, I think.
What's that again?
Duke's the number 1 seed. And,
Duke is number 1 as of yesterday or today.
Yesterday.
And I think that's legitimate. They beat 3 top 10 teams in the ACC championship tournament. They were number 1 until they lost a couple games after their star player got hurt. So they've reclaimed a position they probably deserve.
So they'll face the winner either of VCU or University of Central Florida. So Virginia Commonwealth or UCF, that should be a good matchup. 8-9 is always good. You know anything about those schools, Nate?
Run that by
Central Florida and Virginia Commonwealth.
Well, University of Central Florida, UCF,
yeah,
has made a name for itself in football.
Yeah, recently, yeah.
So I know that part. I didn't realize that basketball was that good until I saw the pairings. I happened to read.
They actually have a former Duke legend, Johnny Dawkins, the former head coach of Stanford.
Yeah. And I did notice when I happened to look at this bracket in the record this morning. I just happened to look at it today, by the way. And yes, I know University of Central Florida has made a bid to become a major athletic school.
Yes, they have.
Now they're in the central part of. Are they in Orlando?
They're in Orlando, correct, where Disneyland's located. or Disney World, excuse me. Disneyland's in Anaheim. But let's go to these games will be in San Jose though. Mississippi State, former UCLA head coach Ben Howland, is the head coach of the Bulldogs, and he'll be taking on the Liberty Flames. Liberty's a newer school. And the Virginia Tech Hokies, led by Buzz Williams, will be taking on the St. Louis Billikens. Know anything about any of those schools, Nate?
Well, I know the St. Louis Billikens have had a rich history of some pretty good basketball over the years.
Like Rick Majerus was there,
right?
Yeah.
And also there was several times when the this is many years. This is old school before your time, but quite a few times the NCAA tournament either held the regionals or the actual Final Four in the St. Louis Arena.
Yeah, wow.
The historic St. Louis Arena,
Yeah,
prior
St.
to whatever
Louis-
it is they have now.
St. Louis had actually a rich basketball history nobody knows about.
And I know that one of the most famous championships won was in St. Louis, and that's the one where UCLA was at the end of its dominance, where they won like 10 times in 11 years. And I'm talking about a Bill Walton season
Yes.
under the legendary coach
John Wooden.
John Wooden. And Bill Walton in this game, the game was fairly close, but it's like I think it was Villanova, but they were never. Their famous saying was, "We were never out of this game, but we were never really in it either." Mm-hmm. UCLA led by 7 or 8 points or 10 points the whole game, but Villanova was always hanging around. But Bill Walton, get this, went 17 for 18, and the only shot he missed, he tipped in.
Wow.
So he never. Every time he put up a shot, they scored, and that was in St. Louis Arena.
Then Maryland will be taking on either Belmont or Temple. That should be a good one, Maryland.
Maryland in the early 70s made a bid to try and become the team that would knock off UCLA. They had I can't remember the name of the coach, Lefty Drizel or something like that. Oh, you remember that?
I believe so, yeah.
And he had bumper stickers printed up that said UCLA was the Maryland of the West. So
Then you either...
and they're called the Terrapins. Always thought
Yep,
that
the
the
turtle.
Wolverines always kind of intrigued me.
LSU got in, and their coach is still suspended over some investigation of fraud.
Okay.
They'll be taking off on the Ivy League school of Yale.
So they better take advantage of it, because they may not have a chance to be eligible again
Nope.
for a while.
Louisville and Minnesota. This one's going to be interesting because, Rick Pitino's son is the head coach of Minnesota. Richard Pitino, a longtime assistant for his dad at Louisville.
Right.
So that will be interesting. No longer at Louisville is
And I
Rick
guess
Pitino.
we could say Rick Pitino is one of the top 5 legendary coaches of the last 30 years
In
or
college
something.
basketball history, yeah.
Except he was a miserable coach of the Boston Celtics, but we'll forget
Yeah.
that part of his career.
And remember, he was Kentucky Wildcats coach in the 90s.
I remember that. He's been on a couple of different versions of the same rivalry, right?
Yeah, Louisville and
Yeah.
Kentucky. Yeah. Michigan State versus Bradley University from Peoria, Illinois. Know anything about either Michigan State or Bradley?
Well, I know that Michigan State has just been an ongoing power for
Yeah.
30-something years, and that makes up for the fact, and they often beat Michigan in basketball, which makes up for the fact that Michigan tends to sort of rule them in football. Although Michigan State had, I think, 3 wins in a row against our former 49er coach before he trounced them this year. And then the other team, Bradley, for what it's worth, was a big basketball power in the late 50s, early 60s.
Was it? I didn't. Yeah.
Yes, they were both off. In fact, they won. I think they won an NCAA tournament. I think they won the NCAA tournament in 1959 or 63 or something like that.
Let's go through the West region and get through the bracket really quick. Gonzaga.
Real quickly, Bradley was also a big one in the NIT in those
yeah.
days. And before we leave this, I want to talk
Yeah.
about the NIT briefly.
Go ahead. No, you can real quick if you want.
Well, what I want to say is I have mixed feelings about this bracket being so large because that was a greedy thing by the NCAA. In fact, not only is it 68 teams?
Yeah.
Or 65 teams. They have 4 playing games at the top, by the way.
Yeah, those will be tomorrow night and Wednesday.
And the reason I mentioned, and I know why they do that, because there's good teams, quote unquote, left off the bubble because a mediocre team can win a conference tournament.
Plus, it's money too.
Right. But then a mediocre team can win a conference tournament championship, and they still got to let the high-seeded team in, and then you've lost a slot that somebody else deserved. So that's why the play-in. I just want to mention, when I was growing up, the NIT was once a very prestigious tournament.
Yes.
And it used to be there was 32 teams in NCAA and 32 in the NIT, and they were about equal. Now, I guess it's the NIT's fault that they let the NCAA kind of take over them. But I'm just sorry they've marginalized the NIT so much.
Yeah.
And now, one thing about the NIT that was a little bit different, I guess you could give the NCAA credit for this. The NIT is always based in New York. It was a big deal to be in Madison.
Square.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madison
Okay,
Square.
so having said that, let's go back to the...
So the West region, Gonzaga, number 1 seed in the West. We know that school in the WCC. They play Pacific every year.
And I was just going to say, we have relevance to this because Stockton gets to see and it's always a top 5 team usually every year. We get to see Gonzaga and Stockton, and they are always one of the favorites in the tournament.
And then also in that region, Syracuse versus Baylor. That should be also a good matchup. Syracuse, a powerhouse also in college basketball history.
And Syracuse is now in their 3rd or 4th year since Boeheim
Boeheim's still there. He's still coaching. Yeah.
He's still coaching?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he'd retired.
No, he's still
coaching. How did
coaching.
I miss that?
Let's go through this real quick.
My goodness, he's been around forever.
Marquette and Murray State. Know anything about those schools?
Yes, Marquette was a big power in the 70s with Al McGuire, and he
legendary broadcaster too.
Yes, and he was the one that was. Now he's one of those broadcasters that was really great for a while, and then you got tired of hearing him after a little while. He kind of wore out his welcome, but he had one of the great lines I ever heard. What are those guys doing on the court? They're out there building Etzels. But anyway, Al McGuire won his championship. I think he only won one, but he won his championship because University of North Carolina, under Dean Smith, went into the 4 corners. I remember before the shot clock, they used to be famous for running a 4-corner offense to kill time. And they and we could all tell it watching everyone I think in America said, "Don't do it yet." He went into the 4 corners too soon, like with 8 minutes to go. And I think they were leading Marquette by 8. This is about 1977, 76, 77. And sure enough, what it did was Marquette would break through and get a basket, get another one. They'd chip away, and it went from 8 to 6 to 7 to 5 to 4. What North Carolina did was take away their own momentum. They had been controlling the game, and then North Carolina could not hit a shot or a free throw.
Florida State will be taking on Vermont. That's always a interesting matchup. The 14,
real quickly, Marquette's located in downtown Milwaukee, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Kind of a blue-collar, even though it's an elite Catholic school, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Chris Farley went there.
It's got kind of a blue-collar atmosphere. Yep. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said Florida State and Vermont. The Seminoles will be taking on the Catamounts, I believe. That's Vermont. Buffalo either is going to play the winner of Arizona State and St. John's. That's an interesting matchup, St. John's and Arizona State. That's a playing game because Bobby Hurley is the head coach of Arizona State.
Former Sacramento
St.
King.
John's head coach is Chris Mullen.
Oh, another former Golden State Warrior legend and general manager.
Texas Tech will be playing Northern Kentucky. That should be a good one. Nevada, close to us, will be the 7th seed. They're taking on the Florida Gators.
Right.
And then Michigan versus Montana. Then let's go to the South real quick. Virginia, the Cavaliers. One of the greatest teams you could say never won the tournament with
they've
Ralph
always
Sampson.
They've always been on the fringe of winning it, never quite made it.
Ralph Sampson.
They had Ralph Sampson, who later became a Sacramento King. They should have probably won it with Ralph Sampson.
Ole Miss and Oklahoma, that should be a good matchup. Wisconsin taking on Oregon. Kansas State versus another California school, UC Irvine of the Big West.
I was going to say.
The Anteaters.
The Anteaters. I mean, how can you root against a team called the Anteaters? You want to just see them sucking up the defense.
I don't know if you'll be rooting for the St. Mary's Gales. They'll be taking on the Villanova Wildcats.
I was going to say that, too. Yeah. I've got 3 teams that I really want to see win. Well, I as a Pacific fan, I didn't like Nevada very much. Yeah. They were tough rivals. But since there's an East Coast bias for basketball and television and rankings and power rankings and all that stuff, I always root for somebody like Nevada, St. Mary's, Gonzaga, or somebody to upset the apple cart. Now, Gonzaga, as great as they've been, there's the one knock on them. They've only made the Final Four twice, and they've been knocked out in the first or second round numerous times. They did make the championship game 2 years ago and didn't play particularly well and lost. So,
Purdue will be playing Old Dominion. That should be a good one. Then Cincinnati versus Iowa. The Bearcats taking on the Hawkeyes. Then Tennessee, a number 2 seed, will be taking on Colgate University.
Now, what is Cincinnati formerly known for?
Skyline Chili.
How about the Big O, Oscar Robertson? Yep. And also another great forward whose name escapes me right now is a great rebounder, but it'll come to me later, maybe next show.
And in the Midwest region, that will be North Carolina versus Iona. It's the number 1 seed, North Carolina. Then Utah State versus Washington. Utah State won the Mountain West this weekend.
That's another team I always root for. Now, they used to have a tremendous rivalry with Pacific back in the Big West Conference.
Auburn will be taking on New Mexico State. That should be a good one. Kansas State, Northeastern, Iowa State, and Ohio State. Then Houston is the number 3 seed. They'll be taking on Georgia State. And then Wofford, Seton Hall. Then Kentucky versus Abilene Christian. And their Final Four and your championship game is in Minneapolis.
And Minnesota. What famous basketball college team is not in there? And they didn't make it. I guess they'll be in the NIT probably.
Oh,
They were supposed to be on the bubble, and I guess they didn't make it.
I'm trying to
Unless
think.
you said them and I didn't hear it.
What school?
University of Indiana.
Yep. And, well, the Hoosiers. That's a great movie
Yeah.
with Gene Hackman. But, Nate, we'll in a couple weeks we'll be doing this, right?
Probably April 1st.
April 1st.
This was aired on March 19th.
Yeah, so thank you for always joining us right here on Stockton Alive. Until next time.
As our train with our great theme song chugs out of the station.